Greetings. I have what I think is an interesting subject to talk about today. Some of you may realize that I have recently, within the past several years, made the decision to begin to read tarot professionally, as well as just for my own personal use. I have been reading tarot my whole adult life, and I know you have seen before that these are my cards, my very favorite cards that I swear by, because they're a knockoff on the Rider-Waite. They're called hoi polloi, from the early 70s, 1970 or 71, I think, and they're very much like the Rider-Waite. The colors are different, but most of the images are just about the same. Anyway, this has been my go-to deck for just about my entire life. I feel very personal to them. They have been with me throughout my whole life. They have my energy, all my energy in the cards. I trust them very much to do a very reliable reading. But I came across, somebody pointed out to me that if I want to read for others, that I might want to offer options to use other decks, because different people resonate with different decks. Some people might not like this deck at all, or whatever. So, and like other tarot readers, people interested in tarot, I have collected some decks over the years because I'm interested in the symbology, some symbols that they have. Some of them are real fun, right? And we all have some of those favorites, but usually I didn't find that they read very well for me. So anyway, I, in earnest, very recently have decided that I'm going to use some of these decks that I have been collecting and offer some readings, certain readings, using those cards. And there an interesting point came up, and that's what I want to address today. I'm not sure how to begin, other than to say that most of the time, I'm going to put on my glasses because as a matter of fact, I have some things I want to show you, plus I have a few notes that I took I want to refer to, because I don't want to forget the points that I'm trying to make. So I'm going to put on my glasses. Anyway, most of us, when we read tarot, I won't say most of us, but I think a lot of us, if you do not do it this way, you may want to try. We get, okay, first of all, let me back up a minute. When you get tarot cards, you buy a little box. Here's a little, this is a Rider Pocket Edition, little pack. And in with the cards, there will be a little book, right? One of these. And this has all the meanings, and it might even offer a few spreads in the back, I'm not sure. But these things, if you were ever trying to learn how to read the tarot using these little books, you would go absolutely crazy. First of all, I can't read this, too small. You might be lucky and find something a little bigger. But then you look up, okay, what is the meaning of this card? Okay, here we go. According to this, here's for one card. It means fatigue, long-term commitment, great effort, excessive spirit of protection, and preservation. Now, I don't know about you, but that means nonsense to me. That's just a bunch of garbly-guck. Just a bunch of adjectives. They find adjectives and they put them in the book, and now whatever. They put in a bunch of little words in. You just can't tell up or down. So, those books are stupid. In my opinion, they're stupid. Most of us have become familiar, and we take cues from our cards often. The symbols. We are taught to, and we have learned to look at the actual symbols on the cards for a clue of what the card might mean. Now, that's just part of it, but I'm not trying to oversimplify, but that's really a very important part, especially to start to get to know the cards. That's a very, very important thing to do, okay? And I think there's lots of videos out there where people have explained that far better than me. I'm not going to try to tread on anybody else's toes and do it again, or insult you and do it again. I don't need to do that. If you want to learn how to do that, of course I would be glad to teach you. If you want me to teach you, just get in touch with me. I'll be happy to. But other than that, there are a lot of people that have free videos on that on YouTube, so that you might want to check out some of those. Anyway, that's wonderful. Okay, and so when you get a new deck, sometimes you're really fortunate to get a new deck, and I have one deck that I'm using all the time, and a new one that I'm going to be using in some of my new spreads, which I've had it for a long time, but I haven't used it. It's the Wildwood Tarot. And this one, of course, it is paralleled a little bit with it goes a little bit parallel, pretty much parallel, a little bit of a different approach than the Rider-Waite. But what it does have are very rich symbols, really beautiful artistic renderings on every card that gives you lots of places to go to try to interpret the cards, okay? So that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Other than that, experience with the cards, and I've also showed you in the past, a good way to learn is when you start to learn meanings of the cards, to make a journal. This happens to be a journal of, I have one for the minor arcana, one for the major arcana, and I put images of the cards inside. Well, this is actually the minor arcana. Put images inside, and then there we have, here we have the Three of Cups, okay? And then I write several pages, 3, 4, whatever pages on the Three of Cups. And I can always add to it, and so that's really lovely way to learn. Okay, now, I could do the same thing. It would not be reasonable, though, to expect me, with every deck that I try to read, to go about doing that, okay? So then you can say, well, then how about just you learn the cards, and anybody who's been reading cards since I've been started to read in early 1970s, so I'm talking, over 40 years, that I've seen these images of my cards. I have them pretty well cemented in my brain. If I think of the Three of Swords, I know what the Three of Swords looks like, this version, right? So I have that image in my brain, okay? And I also know pretty much what the Three of Swords tends to indicate when I see it in a spread, okay? So that should be all well and good. But a point to be made is that until the very beginning of the 20th century, there were no images, pictorial images on the minor arcana cards other than what we call the pips. Like if you look at a deck of playing cards, you'll see the 8 of Hearts would have 8 hearts on it, right? Well, the same goes true for cards that were published before very early 20th century. I don't know, something like, I think Rider-Waite was, the publication date on the Rider-Waite was something like 1911 or something like that. I don't recall. But anyway, not that important. But there were other cards. There were other cards before that time, right? And I just happened, one of the decks that I'm getting to use, that I want to use, is one of those earlier decks, and that is the Tarot of Marseille. It is a French deck. It is, I'm not sure how old it is, but it's a lot older than that. And the problem with this deck, not a problem, but a problem for somebody who's new to tarot with this deck, is that the minor arcana do not have images, okay? Where we would see something like in the Rider-Waite or in my hoi polloi, the Ten of Wands. This would be a Ten of Wands, right? We can see the image. I hope you can see it very easily. There's a clue from that to try to make me think what that might mean. We see a man who's very burdened. He's carrying a lot. He's got a lot on his shoulders. He's trying to do it by himself and carry this bundle of 10 wands, 10 wands to wherever he's going. And it looks like where he's going is far away because you see in the picture he's got a long way to go. And he's shouldering the responsibility all himself, we might interpret this to say, okay? It's one interpretation. But if I want to look at the 9 of Wands, or the 10 of Wands, or in this case, bâton, which they are in French, in this Tarot of Marseille, this is what it looks like. Can you see that? Okay. And where we also see First of all, there's no images other than 10 bâtons, 10 wands, right? 10 wands. And with this 10 of wands, we can see it this way. Sometimes we will see it this way. And that might have a different meaning altogether, or different emphasis at least altogether. Not necessarily the opposite, but sometimes just a little different. A card like this, if I turn that the other way, what did I do? I did nothing. You see, there's no up or down to this card. And not even a clue on the back. Where this has a back, this has a clue. I can see if it's up or down. This one has no clue, right? Okay. Here's another example. Here we have the Five of Pentacles. We're familiar with this. Five of Pentacles. There's been some kind of a hardship, some kind of a, loss, some misfortune has happened to these poor people that are out. Seem to be out in the cold. Right. Maybe some kind of a financial loss or something has happened to these poor people. Here we have nothing. Here's the Five of Pentacles, or coins, or they call them the denier, or the coins. They're called coins. Nothing. There's no clue. And up or down doesn't mean anything. Okay. So what do we do? That's the purpose. One of the things I want to talk about today. What do we do? How do we learn these cards? Well, for me, there's a couple of different things that I look at. Okay, first of all, I will get out and do as much studying as I can and look in these little books just to see. Or in my case, I was able to look online and find some information on this tarot and look and see. For instance, if I'm going to divide these cards up into their suits, into the different suits, the minor arcana. What kind of correspondences do we have? Now we all know about swords. Okay, like in the Rider-Waite, the swords represent, okay, they're air, right? Or they represent some kind of an idea, some new intellectual thing, or some abstraction, maybe communication. Okay. Okay, but in this deck, what do they mean? What do they mean? Okay. And I found out something interesting, which might help me. Because I don't know that it's logical for me to say this card and this card have exactly the same meaning. Because what is to show me on this card that it means this? Do you see my point? I can go by numerology. I can go and say, okay, there's 5. Okay, we know coins. We know or pentacles means material things, maybe money, maybe a job, something like that. Something in the material realm. Maybe your home, some material thing you own, right? Or you have. 5 could mean, 5 usually I think, what does that mean? Like some kind of a change. Isn't that correct? Some kind of a change. And so we might say, okay, there's some kind of a change. But what kind of a change? If I want to go to the book, does the change have to do with, I'm looking up the book here. I can find it. Well, see here, it has savings, economic spirit, patrimony to be protected. Well, again, why do I even look at those books? They make me nuts. Anyway, what kind of a change? What can I say? Okay, we look at the cards around it, of course. We look at the cards around it in a layout, right? We'll look and see what's around it. We also would look and see, I would look and see what other kind of cards are in the layout. Are they a lot of major arcana cards? Or are they minor arcana cards, first of all? Is it a big, big change having to do with a life change, maybe? Or is it a little change? Okay. Are there a lot of pentacles, other pentacles in the lay? If there's a lot of other pentacles, it might have to do with whatever we're looking at, the new job or or maybe new fortune, right? New fortune, some kind of an increase in pay maybe, or loss, than what the cards are. So, of course, we get the clues like we do any other time from the layout, from the spread. We can do that. But there was something more that I found in these minor arcana cards that they spoke about, and it said, every card I think most of us agree. Every card, when we read tarot, has both positive and negative. There's not so much, this is the good card, and this is the bad card. This is the positive, and this is the negative. No, that's not necessarily true at all. We know that, right? But we do know there are two sides, where something might mean. There's different ways of interpreting. This man might be very, very burdened, okay, carrying this all alone. But when he gets here, there might be people here that are going to help him. There might be some people there that are going to help him. Okay? We get clues. We get clues that there might be two sides. In this deck, the Marseille deck, the Tarot of Marseille, it talks about cards not having reverse meanings like good, positive, and negative, but it talks about everything having two sides in that. When something causes pain, at the end of something you have pain, and let's say you have a relationship, okay, and you break up the relationship finally breaks up and it's heartbreak. It also represents the end of something that was bad, which is good, right? The end of a bad relationship is good. That's positive. So in that, do you understand what I'm talking about? That's looking at two different sides. This tarot reminds us to do that all the time, and every one of these cards, that's what we're going to be looking for. But we might not do that in every card in the right way. So that would be a little different, okay? Another thing that we might look at is, it also pointed out to me, this would help me a lot too when I'm doing a reading with these cards, that swords, we know swords already always usually do have two sides, because we talk about the double-edged sword, right? Cutting two ways, right? We talk about the image of the sword and how it has the blade, a blade on each side. So, always in this tarot, they say always look at those two sides, especially when you're talking about swords, okay? So I found some clues online. I found some little good suggestions. I know to go and look at the surrounding cards and layout, okay? Remembering, yes, of course, what I have learned, but now again, how can it be different? That was what I learned. I think one of the best points that I learned is perhaps it's good to know how the reading might be similar using these cards, but what makes the difference is how it may differ. And there I look at the major arcana cards. Oh, first before I go there, I want to talk about the court cards. The court cards basically are one for one. They do have, of course, the Rider-Waite, or in my case, the Hoi Polloi decks, the court cards, we have the page, the knight, the queen, and the king. In this deck, the Tarot of Marseille, instead of the page, we have the knave, we have the knight, the queen, and the king. And they more or less usually refer to specific, a little more specific, I think, than the Rider-Waite. But not necessarily so. It doesn't have to be necessarily so. But one thing I find very good to do is I already have in my head people in my life who I think about when I see, for instance, when I see the Queen of Pentacles. I have a certain friend or acquaintance or whoever or somebody in my past that I think about when I see the Queen of Pentacles, and the traits of that person are traits that I can find in the card, and that sometimes helps me. Okay, it sometimes helps. This is what I do when I get a new deck. I look at those court cards, and I do look at the meanings, try to look at some of the keywords for those court cards, and see if it's the same person, because it might be a completely different person. It might be a little different person. Because that's one thing that I found in some of these decks does vary. Okay, enough about that. Don't want to overwhelm you. I'm just trying to give you a little information, which I found a little interesting. Because you can apply this to any card, any deck of cards. I want to just say, in the major arcana, we're lucky because we do have imagery in both, decks. They all show, I don't know if they all show, but I don't know if I would want to read one that didn't have any imagery at all in the Major Arcana, because that's really what you like. I mean, you choose a deck usually based on the imagery, right? If it had none, I don't know if it would be as enjoyable. But anyway, this is where I can find some of those differences that I was talking about. Remember I said the differences? We know, for instance, the Fool. Everybody knows the Fool at the beginning of the journey. There's so much imagery in this card. Everybody starts here when they start to learn. And so I think most of you know this one the best, right? And we see a lot of things. We see somebody who's carefree or whatever, or oblivious. He's ready to walk. He might be going to fall over the edge. We're not sure. You're not even sure if that's a big cliff. It could be just, the drop could only be this much. Like, we're assuming if we think it's a big cliff. We don't know what it is. He's got a little tiny knapsack. It's a sun, big sun. All these things. He's holding a rose. All these things have different kinds of meanings, all these images. But what I wanted to focus in right now in, what is the difference between this card and the card in the Tarot of Marseille? I don't know if you can see. But one thing that is very obviously different is in the Rider-Waite, in this hoi polloi card, the one we're familiar with, the little dog is at his heels. It's a little dog, very much a dog, I think. Okay, I was talking about the tarot. I was just interrupted here. I don't know how I'm going to edit this, but someone, of course, came to the window, who they always do when I'm doing the video. Anyway, we're talking about the very rich symbolism in this Fool card that we're very, very familiar with. And the little dog was something that caught my eye, because the little dog is one thing that's very different between the Rider-Waite and this Marseille, Tarot de Marseille. The little dog in the Rider-Waite deck is at the heels. He's encouraging the walker. He might be also going along as a companion. He also might be trying to warn, some people think, he sometimes may be trying to warn the Fool to look down and see what's below. We don't know. He might be barking and trying to give him some kind of a clue. Okay? In this deck, the Fool card is different. That the Fool, I don't know if you can see, but the dog, he's got his chausses, his pants here, open. He's ripped them, or he's either attacking him from behind, or which he might well be, because you see he's got up on his bare skin back there, or excuse me, he might even be pushing. He might be pushing the man on. So this might have a little bit of a different meaning than this. So that's something that I would want to look in. If I see something that different, I might want to pay attention to that. There's some reason, maybe, that it's a little different imagery. Okay. Another one that I find is sort of interesting. We all know the Hermit, and the Hermit very much looking down from above, right? He's looking down, and he has a light to show him. May go. He's going to try to. We can see it's a rocky place, and we can see that it's he has a light to help him along the way. That he's probably going to come back. Maybe he separated himself. Maybe it's time to come back. Whatever. In this deck, he's not looking down at where he's been. He's looking forward. He's looking forward. Okay. I'm getting so many interruptions. This is really bad. Anyway, another card I wanted to look at was the Hermit. The Hermit that we're familiar with, is looking from above, right? He's way up. He's isolated himself, and we think, maybe, and he's now ready to return, coming down, ready to come back down. He's looking down, lighting his way, maybe going to proceed with caution. He has a stick to help him keep his footing, whatever, coming down. It's a rocky terrain. Here, he's not looking down at all. He's looking forward. He's looking forward. Looking this up, I'm looking, and he's more of an internal traveler, kind of a character, or somebody who is throwing light to help others, to lead the way for others. So he's not the isolated figure that we're used to in the Hermit. Okay. He's somebody who's used his experience as a walker to maybe instruct and guide others. A little bit of a different meaning here, okay? Which I get a clue when I see the images. Another very obvious one. I just have two more I want to show you, because one is very obvious. This one, Death card, remember? Death card is a change, right? It's some kind of a change. Something has ended and it's time for something big to begin again. And it's a big thing, we know, because of the da-da-da-da, you know, he comes with this big flag and he's on a horse and there's people, and how the people are reacting. These are people that are reacting to this change, right? This is something we look at. In this card, in this Marseille deck, this French deck, it's a little bit different, okay? We still see a change. There's still going to be a change, but it is more or less the beginning coming from the end of something else, which we see in the Wheel of the Year. Something dies so something else can be born. This is very much having to do with that. Not one greater than the other. Here this figure is harvesting the arms and, if you can't see what they are, they're harvesting heads and arms and legs and feet of something else. So it has a lot to do with karma. And it also has, but it also has to do with, ultimately things do change. Nothing stays the same forever. Okay. But this is like a major, this is more of a major, some kind of thing that's concluded. It doesn't stay forever, but it's the beginning. Something else is just another thing that's going to begin. This is a quieter, more gradual, inevitable, just changed. Do you see my point? I see this a little differently. And one last one is the Tower. Okay, again, the Tower, we talk about, it's a very sudden change again. It's not so pleasant, right? There's a lot of chaos happening here with the Tower. Things falling down, an absolute loss of control, things flying everywhere, lightning striking, bodies flying through the air, plummeting to the ground. Look at the difference in this Tower, though. This Tower, they're really already to the ground. And they don't seem really the worse for wear. So this is kind of this has a little more to do with renewal. They survived the fall. We're not sure if these guys are going to survive the fall at all. It's questionable, right? Because it doesn't look like a very safe place to land. They're landing here on rocks, and here they're landing on nice green grass. So even though it's a big sudden change, this one very much is going to remind us that you're probably going to be okay from this. It's going to be a little different, but it's probably going to be okay. It also helps to give you, this one also talks about giving us insight. Things have to change to give us insight, because some things are just wrong for us. But we think we get all comfortable. We get all comfortable in our big house with our big cars and stuff, and maybe that's not right for us. Right? So there's a big change to get you back to where you should be sometimes. Anyway, I don't want to talk forever, and I'm afraid if I talk too much longer, somebody else is going to come to the window. But I did want to say something about this, because I think this is something that happens to a lot of us coming across. You know, when you want to change from one deck to another, how do you do it? I again want to reiterate, there's nothing really wrong with learning the cards and using those meanings for every deck. But I think you're missing out on some of the richness of some of these decks, some of what they have to offer. Like I'm saying, this Marseille, Tarot Marseille, is really a deck that I probably would not have purchased myself had I looked at it, because a lot of the imagery is the same. It's not quite as detailed as my hoi polloi. There's really not a lot of reason to leave it until I started to look into a little bit about what the basis of some of the meanings of the cards. And that's when I got interested in it. And I saw it just adds another richness to your reading. And of course, all of these meanings can apply anywhere. And it's another meaning that can go in if you're journaling like I do about the meanings of the cards. Those meanings can go in this book just as easy. These does not have to be, because this is not even, these books are not even about this deck. These are about, I don't even know what card deck I have in here. It's something it's similar to the Rider-Waite, but it's not Rider-Waite. Anyway, that's all I want to say today. And I want to say one more thing. One more thing. A good way to practice this. Okay, if you're trying to learn a deck that you are not familiar with, Don't jump in, even though the little book usually has it at the end. Very often has like a Celtic cross spread at the end. They always seem to include that spread. Don't jump into a big 10 card or whatever spread and try to read a new deck. Start small with smaller spreads, and that's what I have done on my website. If you have seen my new website, it's just coming together now, but the birdandthecrone.com, birdandthecrone.com. I'll leave the address down below. But anyway, I have some special, smaller, little smaller or maybe more specific readings with some of these new decks, because fewer cards. It's a chance for me to really get to know these cards and use them for some special readings, rather than, why, if I could make a really good, if I could do a Celtic cross reading, a really good one with these cards, why would I use these, really? So I have some other spreads that I'm using. So I'm applying different spreads, using different spreads for different decks, which is a good way to really get very familiar with the cards. Plus, it's also a good way to spice it up a little bit, mix it up a little bit. Give yourself some variety. Okay? Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for, thank you for your patience in waiting for my videos. And also, thank you for watching. Thank you so much for coming to my channel today. I am Rebecca, and I wish you blessings.